Welcome to this FEI Coach Education webinar. I'm Gareth Marr, delighted to be joined by FEI Head of Coach Education Niall O'Regan and FEI Coach Coordinator Craig Sexton. This webinar is going to focus on the new Coach Education Pathway, and we're going to briefly look at what's been gone before, but it's pretty much all about what's ahead. Some really exciting stuff to look at. Niall, coach education has been something that's continually evolved over recent years, and obviously this new pathway will bring us forward another step as well. What's your kind of earliest memories of what coach education pathway was when you first kind of got involved?
Yeah, it is. Look, it's something to when you're involved in it from such an early age, which I was. It was great. Originally, I remember doing the historical level one, and I remember doing that one, and that was sort of the prerequisite course that you do before going into the UEFA B license. And I think then really the start of the evolution of coach education really was under Packy and the links with Sport Ireland, and really then there was the implementation of the Kickstart coaching courses, which I think really were an excellent addition to the educational framework. And obviously over the past number of years, the signature moment was the introduction of the player development plan under Root Doctor and the alignment of everything we were doing in terms of player and coach development. And over the last number of years, it's just really taken off, and the engagement has just been phenomenal. Like, I think on an annual basis now we're having maybe between 13 and 14,000 coaches actively doing a coaching course. So it's just phenomenal, the amount of people that are hungry to learn and hungry to evolve and develop themselves. And specifically then when 94 or 5% of those coaches are volunteer parents, grassroots coaches, it's just absolutely unbelievable to think that amount of people want to do a formal course to better themselves for their players, their clubs, and Irish football overall.
Craig, I'd imagine one of your first memories of coaching courses goes back to when you were actually a participant on one of the courses. You were used alongside famous Robbie Brady, and you were, we have the footage, don't worry, some golden footage there. We're going to pull it out for the Christmas party, you know, of Craig. Long before he was able to grow a beard, he was interviewed on RTA talking about Packy Bonner and Declan McIntyre. Was that your kind of first exposure to a coaching course?
It was as a being actively involved. I'm quite lucky that I've grown up in a house of football. It's been absolutely engrossed. My dad coached. I was always on the sideline on a Saturday or a Tuesday or a Thursday with him at every session. Oh, that was me. I was engrossed in it from an early age. My dad actually went on to do his B license. Many years ago in the King's Hospital. I'm sure all the coaches who have done it in the King's Hospital, 10 days intensive 9 to 9s. He would have done it at the time, and that was kind of probably the earliest introduction I remember to coach education from them days, and the logbooks that he still has them to this day, big green logbook with all the sessions in it, his analysis and all the different elements to it. So that, I think, to be honest with you, I think was from the environment that I kind of got a spark for it, and then I've been involved in unbelievable environments right through, and the one you're alluding to there around the Packy one was brilliant, and that was probably the first idea I had around coaching and coach education and what it entailed. Was probably a bit of an eye opener then. Yeah.
You remember the first time you actually took part in a course as a coach yourself, like you probably youth circle or sorry,
Kickstart. Yeah, Kickstart one would have been at the time, would have been my first course. I was only, I think I was 17 at the time. I done it down in Crumlin. Mark Kenny was the tutor on the day, I remember, and it was an eye opener for me. I was extremely nervous. I'd gone from playing international football basically the year previously to going to doing a coaching course, and I didn't have a massive want to be a coach at that point. Obviously, I was still playing. I was still loving me football at the time, but it was something that my parents encouraged me to do, that they thought it might be useful for me. I think they probably seen that I wasn't going to be a footballer, and that was the reality. I wasn't good enough. So I think they were steering me in the right direction at the right time. And it turns out 5 or 6 years later, I made that decision on my own to step away from playing, and that was my decision at the time because I wasn't good enough to play, make a living from the game, and I made that conscious decision for me. But I think that's when I was pushed towards that. So it was about 17 was my first real taster of it, and it was not daunting. It wasn't daunting, but it was a really good experience, but a really challenging one as well. I was 17 in a group with older men dealing with coaching scenarios, and I'd never coached before in my life. So that was brilliant. I really enjoyed it.
Well, you've spoken before about the influence of a mentor, and and how positive that can be. I think when people come on to coaching courses, they can be obviously a little bit daunted, a little bit skeptical maybe as well. And then when they get involved with the coaching courses, they can really kind of fall in love with the process, and fall in love with coaching if you have the right mentor, if you have the right coach educator, and also the peers on your course kind of help as well, don't they?
Definitely, and I think what happens is we always talk now formally about this as a community of practice, where you're actually, when you do a coaching course, you're actually entering a community of people that are in the same level in terms of a qualification within the framework. So you're most likely could end up, if you're a grassroots parent volunteer coach and you end up doing a PDP1 now, you could end up probably in 5 years' time being on a B or an A license with the same 3 or 4 or 5 people that you met 4 or 5 years previous. And it's amazing the friendships that evolve from coach education. Like I myself was very lucky in terms of the starting point. I remember actually King's Hospital, there's a pub, if I'm right, down the road from that, the Dead Man's.
Yeah,
I actually had my 21st there because we had a contact during my 21st birthday, and the lads took me for a few drinks that night. And it was great even to have that environment where people would even see and you have those memories. And that was only brought to my attention recently when somebody had come back in for a CPD event and they were like, "Do you remember when you were starting out and I was coaching?" And I was saying, "Oh my God, it's mad how time flies." And that's literally 17, 18 years ago now. And it's just great the friendships that you make. But it's really about that. Immediately, we want to set that environment. And I always say, for young players, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, the most important coach is that coach they meet, because we want them to make sure they have a positive experience and fall in love with the game. And it's the exact same in coach education. The grassroots coach educators, the people that are delivering those courses, they're the most important people in somebody's educational experience, because if somebody has a positive experience, you'll engage them for life. They'll stay with you forevermore. And if somebody has a negative experience, then you may lose them, or they may feel it more difficult to re-engage. So it's so important for us to create positive environments and to develop those. We want to challenge people, but develop environments to which people feel safe, comfortable, and that they want to come back for more. And I really do believe that our educators currently are really, really experts in that field of just creating that positive learning experience and making people feel comfortable. And there's just so many positive stories. There's so many people that wherever you go in the country, and that's one thing I love, the consistency of that. The amount of people that talk about they did a course with a certain educator a number of years ago and they may be retired now, or they did a course with a new educator recently, and you're getting the same message, that they created that love for the game and they created that love for coaching.
It's a great point, Craig, isn't it? Because if you do have that positive influence, they can shape things in such a way that wants you to kind of keep coming back, but also maybe to see coaching in a different way. I know from my own experience, but when I did my UEFA B license, I had the pleasure of having Niall O'Reilly at the layout. Niall O'Reilly as my coach educator at the time, and Niall had fantastic coach, really brilliant. Obviously knew about Niall's background, the Ireland underage teams, and then assistant with Brian Kerr at senior level as well. What he done at Belvedere. But when you work with him on the coaching course, like even when he destroyed my session, he done it in a way that I actually kind of felt good going away from it. And I say that because it didn't deter me kind of to walk away and say, I've had enough of this or whatever like that. He done it in a way that was very constructive, that made me want to come back and improve, but also look at coaching in a completely different way.
Yeah, we speak to our educators all the time and our tutors, and they're mentors for coaches coming on the course. So they're not there to put them down. They're not there to create a really, really barrier-driven environment, that it's open, it's holistic, and they're there to facilitate them. They're there to grow these coaches as much as they can. Everyone's different. So every coach that we bring into the system, whether it's a PDP1 or a pro license coach, are different. So we need to facilitate them, and we need to help them grow in whatever areas they need to grow in. And I may want to play the game a certain way, or I might have my methods or my ideas on the game compared to Niall's methods. And that's fine. Our educator's job now is to enhance that and grow that to as much as they can within a framework and within a methodology that we work towards. But we're not saying there's a certain way of doing things and there's a certain way of not doing things. And we need to make sure that we facilitate everybody and allow them to grow within the course setting, because that's our job. That's our job. We're educators. We're here to help people and help them enhance their development within their coaching as much as they can. So yeah, I think you're right, Gareth. I think everyone is different, and it's us finding a way not to put people in a certain box and push them aside. That it's we're saying, you know what, if you want to do it that way, that's fine. Let's find a way to make it better, and let's find a way to make it good. And that comes down to the educator skills, or the facilitation skills. They need to add knowledge to what they're doing, so their own knowledge of the game and their experience is what they've seen. And if they can bring them to the table, we've got a really nice environment for our coaches to learn in, because that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, speaking of making things better, I suppose let's look back at how things were done. Coach Education Pathway 2014. Niall, we see the graphic on the screen of what way the pathway was a number of years ago. Do you want to just talk through what it was?
Yeah, and I suppose it's important to know that everything that was done in the past laid the foundations for where we are today. So it's all about continuous enhancement, and one of the key messages we talk about in our modern delivery is lifelong learning. And what the key aspect of that is that you reflect in everything that you do, and that there is no perfect coach, there is no perfect coaching practice, and there certainly isn't any perfect course. And every time we deliver a course, we look for feedback from the participants, but also from ourselves as educators. And it's really, really important that you constantly evolve. And Ruth Doctor is an adamant in terms of the high performance department in relation to that, where three of the key words he always speaks about are evolve, excel, and inspire. And that's our role as educators, and that's our role as the governing body in football in this country, that we make sure that we constantly evolve the game, we inspire the next generation, inspire those that are involved, and we excel at everything that we do. So looking at the pathway, we would have described this pathway as quite a linear pathway. So somebody coming in at the very start, having never done anything before, they would have come in at Kickstart 1 and had to progress systematically all the way up through the pathway. Now, the issue with that is that there are some people that may have seen as the Kickstart 1 as irrelevant to them. So, for example, you might have an experienced amateur coach who's played in the Munster Senior League here down south, and they've played for 20 odd years, and next minute they retire and they start coaching most likely at the youth or the adult amateur game, and then they're being asked to go back down to a Kickstart 1 course, which is focusing on the real fundamentals of dealing with 6 to 9 year olds. So what we looked at was how we could evolve this, and really probably the signature moment of that was with Ruth Doctor's introduction and the FAI player development plan. And this was significant because there was a number of key recommendations identified to develop football in Ireland, and recommendation 6 was the key recommendation in relation to coach education. But the really signature moment was Ruth's alignment with everything that we did in terms of player development, coach development, and the language that we used. So there was a consistency to everything that we did moving forward. And that was a real signature moment in terms of coach education and development in Irish football from top to bottom. And obviously, we introduced the 2017 to 2020 pathway. And really what you see is you've age-specific courses. So if a coach is working with a 6 to 9 year old, they can do a PDP1. If they're working with a 10 to 12 year old, a PDP2. If they're working with an adult amateur player, we had the adult intro. We also introduced specific workshops, and we introduced a timeline in terms of having to complete 40 formal hours of education before you go to a national D licence. That would have been entry point A. Other entry points would have been a semi-professional player coming in at the national C licence, or a professional player with over 5 years of playing experience coming in at the UEFA B. And obviously then you see the introduction of the futsal, football for all, and the goalkeeping. And that was a real signature one. And Craig obviously was hugely involved. So I think it'd be good for Craig just to explain how we evolved from the previous goalkeeping pathway into that goalkeeping pathway you see on the screen.
Yeah, so when I came into the department, probably in around latter end of 2016, Niall tasked me up to have a look into the goalkeeping pathway and see how we could develop it. We had previous courses there, so the fundamentals of goalkeeping was always there, and we had a higher license course as well. So we looked at implementing a full pathway right through, breaking down a lot of the elements and giving goalkeeping coaches a little bit more of information throughout the course. We felt it was important. We wanted it move away from the jumping back and forward across. We felt that was important for goalkeeping coaches. So it obviously starts at fundamentals of goalkeeping. We had a goalkeeping D licence, which dealt with multiple goalkeepers. We then layered in some more players at the goalkeeping C licence, so it would have been more unit based. Goalkeeping B evolved with Alan Kelly, who was instrumental really in the Goalkeeping B license, and the UEFA GKA, which you would have previously spoke about. But it was giving the goalkeeping coach a new method of working. So introducing them to football actions and reality-based learning. So instead of being in the cabbage patch corner basically with their goalkeepers, they now were an integral part of coaching their goalkeepers within the team context, because that was crucial. So we tried to really start to drip feed that information in from top to bottom throughout our goalkeeping pathway.
Well, where would that be in relation to other UEFA nations? Would they have a similar type of pathway for goalkeepers?
Not that I'm aware of, Gareth, fully. So even in England, probably don't have as much. And they 3 to 4, I think, will be the maximum that I've seen in terms of the research throughout. So we're probably one course ahead, numbers-wise, of everybody. And we felt it was important because we felt we didn't have enough goalkeeping coaches. The people we speak to on the ground and the grassroots or the youth game, we're crying out for goalkeeping coaches throughout the country. I get so many emails weekly looking for goalkeeping coaches. So we felt it was important that we educated them, but we needed to make sure that we educated them the right manner, and the information we were giving them was going to be transferable into the game, because we can put as many courses on as we want. We could have put 10 courses there if we wanted at the time, but we felt the information was being layered correctly, and we felt it was massively transferable then back to the game.
There's also a couple of other courses, other kind of areas around there scattered around. Obviously, the futsal on the left-hand side with Martin Percivali, who's done some great work there. The football for all, the elite grassroots, but the elite youth A, that's a particular one of interest, considering that we've launched the League of Ireland underage tiers in recent years, isn't it?
Definitely, and it was really important in terms of following best practice and the best practice models that UEFA identify. And we were one of the earlier countries in terms of being able to deliver all of the high-end UEFA qualifications. For example, the UEFA GK license, the UEFA Elite Youth A, and the UEFA Pro, because there are a number of the 54 countries still currently not eligible to deliver at UEFA Pro or at UEFA Elite Youth A. So when a new course comes in, UEFA will turn around and they will have an auditing process to make sure that your country is required or eligible to deliver, that they have the coaching network in terms of the workforce available, so that coaches aren't doing a qualification that isn't transferable into the real environment they're going to be working. And then they'll audit the course itself to ensure before they allow you actually be eligible to deliver it. And we're very lucky to be able to deliver each of the higher end courses. But the Elite Youth A was huge for the introduction of the 13s, 15s, 17s and 19s, and having that pathway, I've mentioned it in previous webinars, has been probably one of the most signature introductions of a streamlined football for the development of elite players. And also it gives players the opportunity to challenge themselves with coaches that have elite qualifications. And the UEFA Elite Youth A is an age-specific specialist qualifications for the head of youth development and for coaches working specifically with 13s, 15s, 17s and 19s in an elite environment. And that's actually taken nicely. If you look at the 2020 coaching convention, one of the key things that UEFA have again demonstrated best practice in terms of evolving with the modern game is the introduction of specialist licenses in the UEFA GKB license, in UEFA Elite Youth B license, and the introduction of the UEFA C license. So you can see that UEFA are constantly, every 5 years, that there is a new edition of the coaching convention, and it's something to which they spend a number of years specifically evaluating what they have, looking at the modern game, looking at best practice, looking at research, discussing it specifically at signature events in terms of UEFA hosting coaching convention events where each country would have 1 to 3 representatives to discuss it in person about what is best practice and what do our coaches need. And for the 2020 convention, the 3 core areas that they've introduced over the next 3 years is those specialist coaching qualifications, is the introduction of a mandatory coach educator qualification to ensure that each federation and each country has a specific qualification for the coach educators at each of the respective levels. And they've also introduced that they want to make sure that every country where possible is following the convention as best practice. And you can see here in terms of the visual for UEFA, this is what UEFA identify in terms of the associations from top to bottom. And one of the third key thing was the UEFA Diploma. So up until now, it would have been a national qualification prior to the UEFA B. The UEFA C now is part of the UEFA. And what that means is when a coach does a UEFA C license with ourselves, it's now a transferable qualification across all of Europe, which is huge for any coach wishing to want to have a career or want to travel or want to experience football in another country. So it's great now to see that, because any of the national qualifications that each of the countries would have, they would only be acknowledged or accredited within that country. And the UEFA is the cross-border movement and allowing the freedom of movement throughout Europe. Obviously, you can see here the specific UEFA Pathway, which has the core program, specialist diplomas, and this is the UEFA model in terms of what they give each of the 54 countries and what they ask us to follow. Now, it's important to note that UEFA identify this as best practice. They identify this as what their core recommendations, and it's up to then each of the countries within UEFA's remit to identify how they're going to follow and implement that. And I'm delighted to finally show, after 2 years of hard work, evaluating, reflecting, dealing with coaches' questionnaires, surveys, a lot of work has gone into this. Too many people to thank, so I'm not going to thank any individual, but it's great to now see the 2021 to 2025 pathway. It's quite comprehensive. There's a lot of information, and over the next couple of weeks and months, we will be doing training events and we will be doing specific identification in terms of entry routes. But for ourselves, it looks visually efficient and effective, and we're very, very happy with it. And I think it's great just to start off. And I'm going to ask Craig actually just to go through our formal coaching conferences now, which is a great introduction over the last number of years. And Craig has been instrumental in terms of developing these, and it's great now to have a set calendar of conferences for coaches moving forward.
Yes, we've got our coaching conferences here on the right hand side, and we try to layer it throughout the year and space them out and give coaches opportunities to come and be together at events, and for us to bring experts or professionals or really, really high-end profile people into scenarios where people can learn from them. It's a little bit different than the course. It's not as interactive. It's information driven, that we provide information to coaches. It's a lot of the information will be in line with our methodology, but we do also allow people to access different nations, different coaches that work in different environments, because we feel it's important as well that we expose everybody to high-end information and to all information that's out there, because we're not saying all of our information is the blueprint or the gospel, but we work off a best practice model, and we feel our methodologies are really, really strong in what we do. But we do feel it's important to have a holistic approach towards it. So we work through, obviously, January is when we host our football fitness conference, and we hosted one of them already last year, and really, really successful. So we're just trying to break down the topics, and you'll see that as it goes through. We've a female only conference for coaches working within the female game. And that's in February, and that's a free event. It's been extremely successful over the last number of years. May, we then move into our goalkeeping conference. July, we have a UEFA Pro License and Staff Conference, and this has been a really successful event. So we ran it last year. It coincides with our UEFA Pro License group. We bring all of our staff in, so all of our coach educators who work from grassroots, from top to bottom, right into the room, and we expose the UEFA Pro License students to delivering a conference style event. Our staff are now being exposed to UEFA Pro License students, and it's that type of interaction between the Pro License group and our staff, and it's a really, really valuable experience. And the value for the Pro License lads has been excellent, and where it has seemed to be excellent was we then go to UEFA September, October time on the Pro License as a part of their trip, as a part of one of their many trips that they do on the course, and it sets them up nicely because it's a similar environment that they work through. So it's conference style. They've got to get out of comfort zone. They've got to present to large numbers. They've got to think on their feet and work on their feet as well. So that's been invaluable, and it's really valuable for our staff also to get exposed to the UEFA Pro License level, to see what goes on at that level. November, we have our National Coaching Conference, which is our signature event really in our calendar, a 2-day event that we run from Monte Carlo, and we'll see how we go this year with COVID, but we're planning for November this year again, but we'll see how we go with social distancing and the guidelines. But that's been absolutely phenomenal for the last number of years, and we've got some really, really good guest speakers lined up already, that we'll hopefully be in a position to announce over the next month or so. seeing how things pan out. But and December we're introducing a new futsal conference, which will look at a conference around the futsal game and how we can grow that, and bringing in some really high profile people to expose our coaches to information that they might not have seen before. And so it's a jam-packed event in terms of conferences. It's a nice headache for us in the department to have, that we logistically manage these conferences, but they're brilliant. They're brilliant. We love bringing all the people together, the networking that happens, the atmosphere, the buzz around the room on the days of the conferences are absolutely top class, and I absolutely love them. I think they've been an unbelievable addition to our pathway.
It's really good stuff there, Craig. Really spread out over the year as well, stretched out. Noel, can I ask a very kind of cynical question about this? When you look at it visually, there's a hell of a lot in it, as you said yourself there. The skeptic might say, of course you're adding more in. You're looking for more money. You're looking for more people to get on courses and keep the ticker going. Like, is obviously there's reasons for each different section, though, isn't there?
Big time. And look, it's about identifying from the outset. Our job here is to provide a holistic educational pathway, the same as any educational framework. And obviously there's a cost, but the most important thing is when you look back in terms of the visual, the original visual that we showed you in 2014, for a coach to get all the way up to the youth cert, which is the equivalent of a national D license in this visual, that was costing them nearly 400 or 500 euros. That's now reduced down to where a coach could actually work their way up to the national D license for free, based on the 2020 pathway, based on the hours. And within this current visual here, you will see that we've reduced it down where a coach could get to a national D license for less than 200 euros. So it's certainly not about a monetary drive, and we're not looking to include or increase the number of courses that we do. And I think it's important to note that on an annual basis, we have over 3,000 coaches who would do free education with us. So based upon the coaching conference in the female game, based upon the player development plan workshop that Rue Doctor would do, based upon the mental health workshop that we do with Jigsaw. So it's really about making sure people realise that we're not increasing the number of courses that we provide for the sake of making an income, because everything that comes into the association in terms of an income goes back out because we increase the number of staff, and that's something that has to be acknowledged by the association. The amount of investment specifically that Rue Doctor identifies within the high performance budget for the development of coach education and the development of coach educators, it's important to note, and people might even be aware of it, but over the past 18 months we've had 6 training events for all of our coach educators, from grassroots all the way up to the top, including our auxiliary educators. And all that is about is ensuring that every single one of us is working off a consistent football action language, ensuring that whether you do a course in Donegal or in West Cork, that it's the same content delivered by a different person with a different delivery style, but it's the same information that's being provided, so that when they meet at a higher end course, they're able to communicate with each other from different parts of the country and even different parts of the world with a universal reference. And that's really important for us. And for me, I'm very, very proud of what we've created. I think we've answered all of the questions and queries. And a key thing for me, from the 2017 to 2020 pathway, it evolved. So this visual will evolve every year. We will do a review and an audit of what we're doing. And already, even if you look at in terms of the optional workshops that are there, we've only this week agreed with Jigsaw that we're going to provide the 3-hour One Good Coach as a free workshop within the optional workshops as part of our e-learning platform that we're creating. So already you're going to see that there's a number of courses that we probably provide that won't even be within the visual, because we don't want the visual to be overwhelming, and it already is a lot of information. But we believe that once we explain it, and this platform and all of the other platforms that we're going to provide will really simplify for coaches, for clubs, for players to understand when they're working with a coach what they have to do to get to the highest level. And I think that leads nicely in terms of actually now going through our e-learning platform, and Craig has been the sort of staff member that has been driving behind the scenes in relation to that, and has tested that only recently with the delivery of a UEFA B license, but also this week with the delivery of a UEFA A license. So Craig, do you want to talk about what our plans are in terms of e-learning?
Yeah, we're hoping to basically have a one-stop shop for all of our coaches, where certainly from national D license level up, when they enter into a course, that they have access to absolutely everything they need in a one platform basis. So whether it's their course material, whether it's their certificates, whether it's track and CPD, whether it's materials, whatever they need is lives it within this platform. It'll take away the days of sending numerous emails about timetables. If they need to log in, we're hoping that we can find a supplier where it becomes through an app based as well, through the phone. We're trying to grow it. We understand that technology has evolved and people have evolved, that everything needs to be readily available. So we're trying to create that for our coaches as much as we can. So we've been looking at numerous companies. We're trying to find the right fit for ourselves. And we feel it's very, very important to have the right product for our coaches. We need a one-stop shop where if they need anything in terms of their course material, any information towards their courses, that it sits within this platform. That will also lead into, in terms of feedback that they receive from courses, assignment uploads, anything in relation to their course will be living on this one platform. And we feel it's really, really important. And we've looked at the research, we've looked at what happens around the coach education, and a big thing that coaches feel that formal coach education lets them down on is tracking them and staying in contact and the aftercare that coaches receive. So we're quite big on that, and it's something that we want to make sure that we enhance from our point of view, and we feel that an e-learning platform will be a massive, massive help towards that we can make everything readily available. We have access to people more often now because we're working off one single platform, and that will help us have more engagement with our coaches on a day-to-day basis, not just a block-to-block basis, from all of our higher license courses, and it's really, really important.
Craig, as you say, it's important to adapt, isn't it, to the times and to trends as well. I recently did an online course myself, actually through FC Barcelona. It was really detailed. It was really, really well done. I have to say, I really missed the whole interaction with your peers, though, from a normal course, but sometimes it's not feasible to do that. Like, obviously, I did it during the lockdown period, and it just wasn't feasible to do the course face to face. So an online version can be a great alternative at times. And as you say, the continuous development part of it is huge.
Yeah, we've tried our best. So we've recently ran an A license block in terms of adapting and the face to face is a big one for us. It's so important that people interact with each other and the networking that happens and the engagement with each other in the room. We absolutely get that, but unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it at the moment. It's out of our control. We can't get everybody into the room together due to travel restrictions and what may be. So we've recently ran an A license block, and we had a core group in the room who are living based in Ireland and socially distanced. The hotel have been absolutely fantastic. They looked after everybody, really, really comfortable environment to work in. We also had to find a way to engage with our overseas candidates who were maybe living in the UK or further afield. So we've come up with a couple of different solutions, and it worked really, really well. So we live streamed the contact block to them. So guest speakers, any engagement that went on throughout the contact block, we live streamed directly to them. So they had access to that for the full days. But we also had them live on a Zoom link directly on the wall. So we actually had a mini table basically in the room sitting on the wall. So if they wanted to ask a question, they could basically just unmute themselves and speak to the room. So it was like they were in the room, but they weren't in the room. So it was actually quite nice for the guest speakers to actually be able to see them, even though they were on the laptop, even though they might have been in England. We could still speak to them. And we had David Myler on the course, and David likes to hear himself speak a little bit, and he won't mind me saying that, and I'll slag him over that one. But we can certainly hear David, and he made sure he could get his questions in and get his spoke across. But because it's important, and it's important that we adapt and we make them accommodate these people, because they're a part of our education program now. We need to make sure that, again, we're going back to the point earlier on, we need to grow them. How can we help them? That's our jobs as educators. How can we make the best of this situation, adapt to it, but make sure that they're getting the best learning environment? It's not the perfect one, and we know that. We all want to be in the room together, but we've done what we can to make the best of a bad situation at the moment, and the feedback has been brilliant from the guys. They understand that we've accommodated them, but it was interesting, it was enjoyable, and to look at, for a guest speaker, looking at a Zoom link on the room and looking at the participants as well.
Niall, as part of just what Craig touched on there, is that the alternative options here, and I think that's something that really kind of screams out on this new pathway, is that it's broken down into so many different levels that you don't just, as you mentioned on the previous pathway, you don't have to follow the one route here. And just even some of the courses that are brand new to this one, like you see football fitness, you can see performance analysis. You mentioned some of the other optional workshops there as well. Can you talk a little bit about those? Why you added those ones in particular, these new courses?
Yeah, for us, it's really important about making coach education accessible. And obviously the e-learning platform will do that in terms of having online courses and having online interaction. And Craig hit the nail on the head in terms of one of the most important personal improvements that we've identified is that post-course interaction and that sort of communication in terms of when somebody finishes, that we interact with them on a regular basis. And to do that online is probably the best in terms of being accessible to everybody. But in terms of coach education, now you'll see what we've done. The module CPD element, what we're trying to do there is we're trying to give people more specialist subject matter in areas to which that are really important in the development of themselves as a coach, but also it gives coaches the opportunity to test the waters in terms of respective levels, because sometimes people don't know where they fit.
Yeah.
And sometimes people think they want to be something that they're not. Like, for example, I remember the very first time we made the changes to the 2014-16 pathway, which was quite linear, and everyone wanted to get to the pro license. When we introduced the age-specific courses and the additional levels in terms of the D and the C license, I remember the element of backlash. I remember there was one creative backlash in terms of somebody was calling me a hobbit, and he was saying I'm making my journey to Hobbitland in terms of getting to the pro license even harder, and he even went onto Wikipedia and edited the Hobbit cast and put my name in it, and I thought it was very creative. But when I reached out to him and we spoke about it, it was very interesting for me to figure out that he thought that I was putting a stumbling block. Why are you putting more I want to become a pro license coach. And when we discussed it, he actually realized that he didn't want to become a pro license coach because it was completely irrelevant to him. But the pathway visual was sending him that way, and he thought to be the best coach he could be, he needed a pro license. But he was working in a grassroots environment and was never ever going to leave the grassroots environment. By his own esteem, he was a grassroots coach who wanted to stay in that environment. So it was great to get that, and that helped me explain it in good detail moving forward. And really what it's about is this pathway should provide coaches that specifically want to test the waters at a higher level. So if you're a national C or UEFA C licensed coach and you want to do a CPD event and you want to say, I don't know, do I want to go into the professional game? I don't know, do I want to work in the UEFA environment in terms of having a UEFA B license? Now they can have the opportunity in terms of doing one of the modules. Like we have some coaches that apply to a UEFA B license 3, 4, and 5 occasions, and their feedback constantly is you're not working at the required level, you're not working in the correct environment, because you need to be able to deliver coaching practices up to 9v9, and your facilities might only have a 5-a-side AstroTurf pitch. And then it might be a thing where, well, your feedback in terms of what you did in your national C and now your UEFA C was that you're really not skilled at this moment in time to go to that level. So that nearly becomes a stumbling block because they really want to get there. But now what we can do is we can say, well, look, you're not ready to go into the formal course, but at least you can complete the modules in CPD and demonstrate that you're at that level. But it could equally also make them aware that, oh, actually, it is a step too far, and I need to focus on just continuing in the grassroots game, just continue in terms of the CPD. And like the big one for us over the last 3 years was that from 2021 onwards, CPD is mandatory. So people will actually see their qualifications being invalid. So some people will say, I have a UEFA B license, but nobody actually has a valid license unless they have the valid license ID card. On every UEFA certificate that we've ever released, it says a UEFA diploma. So the diploma stays with you for life, but the validity of the license is based on every 3 years you reaching the CPD requirements that are set. Up until 2020, they have been that you do 15 hours of CPD every 3 years. In 2021, there is a new CPD document that will be released to coaches later this year that identifies a credit system in terms of having online credits through the e-learning platform, but also the contact credits through the coaching coaching conferences, and also other events that we'll be running geographically around the country. So it's really, I think we've got a tailor-made pathway in terms of giving every coach the opportunity. And I suppose to talk about it in a grassroots front, if you're a grassroots coach now, there's 3 entry routes. So a new parent or volunteer comes to a local club and they say they want to volunteer and help out because their son or daughter, or they want to just give to the local community. They obviously have to have their Garda vetting, their child welfare and safeguarding completed. And then what they can do is they can look at the entry routes, which will be an online introduction to football, and it'll explain to them, if they go into entry route 1, this is what they're going to experience. Or if they go into entry route 3, this is what they're going to experience. So a coach can look at it and actually say, well, no, I actually have the knowledge and experience that I would gain from doing the entry point 1. So actually, I'm better off going to entry point 2, because I might not be working with 6 to 9 or 10 to 12-year-olds, or I might have 20 years playing experience and I'm going to go straight into working with the adult amateur game. So it's really about giving them a free entry point, online introduction to what the coaching courses that they're going to experience. So if the parent and volunteer has no experience or very limited experience and they decide, no, I really want to get the basics right, they'll go and do the PDP1 and the PDP2. And once they've completed those, the PDP1 and the PDP2, they then will have to complete the mandatory workshops. And the mandatory workshops are color coded, where you see it's the fundamentals of goalkeeping, with the rationale being a lot of those parents, volunteers may not have a goalkeeping coach. So they have to have an understanding or a knowledge of how to deal with a goalkeeper in the reality-based environment in the team setting. So how do they include the goalkeeper in the team setting rather than just pushing them away to the side and letting somebody be just striking balls 20 miles an hour at them? It's about including them and developing them in terms of skills that they need within the game itself. Then you have the small side of games.
Sorry, Niall, is that mandatory workshop, is that one of the 3? And that's
So that's one of the, so those 4 workshops there in orange, the fundamentals of goalkeeping, the 77-99 and the football fitness intro, they're all mandatory. So for a coach, so if that coach decides they get the hunger, or they want to move up through the pathway and they want to progress as best they can, they would literally do the entry point 1, PDP1, PDP2, and they do those 4 mandatory workshops. And what the rationale behind that is that should give them the skill set and the knowledge to work with the players that they're going to be working at, and to give them an understanding of the game and how to create reality-based training sessions. Now, it's very important that not all of those will be contact. So the 7v7 and 9v9, they're best practice workshops where you'll have an experienced educator delivering coaching practices, demonstrating logical sequences, demonstrating how to coach and coaching methodologies. So you're literally observing that. So that will be done on a face-to-face basis. But in time, the fundamentals of goalkeeping and the football fitness intro will be available both online and also in contact. So it's really about not making it difficult for people to progress, but also making it accessible both online and in face-to-face. And once they've that done, they then go into the optional workshops. And within the optional workshops, what we're saying is that to progress to a national D license, you must choose at least 2 of the optional workshops, which are the brown colour. So you have the futsal intro, which again will be delivered online and in person. The football for all, which will be online and in person. The PDP, which is a contact workshop, a free workshop that we release. Delighted to see the introduction of the referee intro, which is new to the coaching pathway, and delighted to have that link because it's so important for grassroots coaches to have an understanding of the role of the referee, but also the rules of the game, because some people just take it for granted that you know the rules, and many of us actually don't know the rules of the game. And then obviously you have the performance analysis intro, which again will be both online and in person. So there's multiple CPD opportunities for coaches that just want to stay within the grassroots environment and don't want to progress to a national qualification, because there's other courses that we spoke earlier about, the Jigsaw mental health course, and there's other courses that we have that aren't on the visual but will be on the website and will be available in terms of specifically identifying what coaches are available for CPD for grassroots. So there's loads of opportunities in all different areas. And once they've done those minimum 2 optional workshops, they then have to have the prerequisites. So at that point, if they decide and they make contact with us and say, I would like to do a national D license, we will be then saying, well, your prerequisite to enter the national D are to have those grassroots qualifications and also those modules in terms of CPD, the football fitness and the performance analysis D. And that then allows them to come into the National D license, and we know when they come into the National D, they have an understanding of what football action language is. They have an understanding of what performance analysis is as a grassroots coach. So how it looks like in terms of implementing it, whether it be just notational analysis, actually writing down notes, watching a game, or whether it be taking video clips and training, how you can use video as a reference point for a coach. And similar, once they've finished the D license, their prerequisite CPD modules are the football fitness C, the performance analysis C, and that allows them to get to a national C license. And when they finish the national C, then they have that decision-making process. I want to become an elite coach in the grassroots game, but I don't really want to work in the professional game, or I don't want to do the professional qualifications. And it's great now to have an elite qualification in the UEFA Grassroots Leaders Certificate, which is an elite grassroots coach working in the grassroots environment and wanting to be acknowledged as an elite coach in that game. And for any other coaches that have done the National C license that want to progress into the professional pathway, they then have to go in and complete the UEFA C license. And Craig now, who's been integral in the development and design of the UEFA pathway, he's going to discuss how a coach will progress from UEFA C up throughout the formal professional pathway.
Sorry, before we jump into Craig there, can I just ask a simple question for a grassroots coach that looks at that and kind of says, I want to get started on this and I want to go through one of those 3 entry points there. What's the timeline they would be looking at, do you think, realistically, if they want to go from entry point 1, 2 or 3 up to that grassroots leader certificate?
It's really based on the coach themselves. What we would encourage is we would try and say that a coach should be involved at least one formal contact every year. But really, if you were somebody that wanted to come into it, and you see people now see football as a career. So we have young people leaving school at 18 years of age, and they're now actually saying, my career choice is to become a coach, a professional coach. So instead of them investing thousands into going into doing a 4-year degree in UCC and PE, they're saying, I'm going to spend the next 4 years and I'm going to invest in myself and become a professional coach. And we have so many successful examples of that. And it's really important to note that there are careers in the game now, and you don't have to be a former professional to have a career in the game. And I think that's really important, because some people think that former pros get treated differently or get fast tracked. Everybody gets treated differently, and that's the key message. Our educational pathway is about providing the best platform for where you sit, whether you're inexperienced or experienced in football. And it's really about making sure that it's an individual learning plan within a national structure. So every individual within the structure has an opportunity to challenge themselves at their respective levels. But if you wanted to, you could realistically go from entry point 1 all the way up to a national D license coach in a 2-year period. If you really, really wanted to complete all of those workshops and really were investing yourself in that. Realistically, to have a UEFA Grassroots Leader Certificate, one of the mandatory requirements would be that you would have a minimum of 5 years active experience as a grassroots coach. So that would be, if you coach for the last 20 years but took the last 2 off, we would be saying you need to have 5 years concurrent. So involved in the modern day, working with the modern player, taking into consideration that experience is invaluable, but knowledge is the key. Knowledge is the word that is so important, and you must have a knowledge of the player that you're working with. You must have a knowledge of the game that we're currently playing, because the game 20 years ago to the game now, and the player 20 years ago to the player now, are completely different. So it's really about making sure that we always have these competencies, and they're the knowledge, skills, attributes and attitudes that we expect coaches to have on entry and exit of a course. And that's where our assessment methodology comes in, where we have an evaluation which is formative and summative. So it's not about a final test. It's literally about what you did before, what you did during the course, what's best practice for you moving from the course. It could be a mentorship. It could be asking you to go back and complete something else. It could be asking you to work with a specific person in terms of your IT skills, your presentation skills. It could be your coaching practice. So it's really tailor-made for individual learning. And the key word we always harp on about is lifelong learning. It's not now about just doing a course for the sake of a course, getting a cert for the sake of a cert, and going back into your own environment and doing what you've always done. It's really about giving people new information, new ideas, and allowing them evolve as an individual within the process itself.
That's a key one there, Craig, isn't it? Because as Niall's kind of really pointed out very, very well, is that coaches can look at this pathway and pinpoint exactly where they want to go in their respective careers. And obviously the grassroots entry point will give them a clear pathway, and dipping into other areas as well, like the goalkeeping and the football fitness, performance analysis, so on and so forth. But on the professional side, if you have somebody coming in at that level, it's quite clear now which way they can go.
Yeah, you could do, but you can also still look at what areas you want to develop in. So you may still want to be a head coach, and that may be the strive for the pro license, where you may want to work in youth development, but you still want to have the professional license while you work in youth development when we look at the professional end of the pathway. So I think that kind of starts to develop when you get onto the UEFA C license a little bit. You start to look at that and you start to think, where am I going now? Do I want to move towards the football fitness element of it because you can? Or am I looking at the performance analysis element of it? Because I can now move to the module or the CPD element of that. I can also move to the goalkeeping, because in terms of all of our prerequisites now, you need to have your UEFA C license to move into them courses. So you have a really good understanding of the basic element of coaching, because the UEFA C license is a really pitch-based course. So you're on the grass for 2 of the 3 days, basically.
What sort of coach, what sort of candidate goes for the UEFA C license? Like what sort of like level should they be at, or or what's a tip? Is there a typical type of coach or a typical coaching background?
So it can be anyone really, Gareth, but you can see on the right hand side probably here on the graphic itself. So it's coaches definitely working within the amateur game, but also semi-professional or ex-professional players will come in at that level as well, and that'll be the entry point for them, depending on the individual, and that's all taken at an individual basis. So if you've had 5 years playing experience at a professional level, number of games, we have a set criteria that we work off. You'll come in at UEFA B license level. Anything slightly below that, semi-professional will come in at UEFA C license level, and that's all within our kind of entry points as well. So even at the entry points 1, 2, and 3, we also have other entry points within our framework here that we can outline in more detail with more information. But the coaches coming in at UEFA C license level, we feel it's a really, really important course. It bridges the gap between the grassroots and the professional license, really. It gives people an idea of what to expect at UEFA B license level, if that's the route that they want to take. It also gives them a taster. Niall spoke about it earlier about testing the water. The UEFA C license level won't be as costly as the UEFA B license level, as you can imagine. So why spend all that money and keep moving when you know it's not for you? So the UEFA C license will really open your eyes at a really cost-effective manner to what coach education is in the professional game, and it won't cost you a hell of a lot of money in that scenario. And you're now making a decision. If you're moving towards UEFA B license level, you're making that decision that I want to work in the professional game. I want to work at the top amateur elite youth game. That's the area that I want to work in. And Niall spoke about it earlier in terms of the industry. People may be looking at that scenario then. If they're moving on from UEFA C, they're really taking their coaching serious at that point. So kind of when you finish your UEFA C, you've got to wait for 6 months before moving into UEFA B license level, and that's mandatory from UEFA. But we recommend 12 months, and it's important that people have that cooling off period in between and implement their learnings basically from C license to B license, and right away through our pathway. We think it's important that people have time to reflect on the learnings that they've taken within the course and implement them and try them out and test them and see what works, and have a proper reflection process and timings in there to see, is it for you, and is the information you've got worthwhile, basically. But when you finish your UEFA C, the next movement for the coach would be into them modules of the CPD, so the football fitness B license and the performance analysis B license. They're prerequisites for the UEFA B. So we've kind of taken the elements. So we would have at UEFA B license level, there would be elements of football fitness and elements of performance analysis in terms of match analysis. We've now slightly taken that out of the UEFA B license curriculum, and we've made sure that our coaches are really, really competent in that area before they even arrive to UEFA B license. So now we've a lot more time on the grass. Now we've a lot more time dealing with coaching specific out on the pitch, coaching methodologies. So we're taking some of the smaller external factors out, really making them competent beforehand. And now we've a lot more time to streamline our coaching whilst we're in on course on the UEFA B licence. And now coaches will then move into UEFA Elite Youth B licence. That'll be the next step. There's no time frame between UEFA B and Elite Youth B. You can go straight in within a couple of months if you feel that's the next step for you. Next step for coaches will be performance analysis A licence, football fitness A licence before moving into the A licence. At that point, then coaches are looking at Elite Youth from A licence. They can now move into Elite Youth A licence or Pro licence if they wish, and that's now looking at the desired route of theirs. We encourage all of our coaches who are looking to go pro licence level to complete the UEFA Elite Youth A licence, because the modern game now, there's a lot of young players breaking through into first teams, for example, and we feel that to best prepare their coaches, it's a really nice skill set to have moving into the pro licence. Also, you're probably managing a football club. Certainly in this country, you're probably managing a football club from top to bottom if you're a head coach and if you're a pro licence holder. So having the Elite Youth A licence will give you the skill set to deal with from top to bottom running the academy, because we've now got the academy structures. So we feel that it's really important to look at that. It's desirable going forward for our UEFA pro licence applicants to have completed the Elite Youth A licence. We feel it will give them a better opportunity to enhance their learnings, basically. And we've also, as you can see, we've also taken away the modules on the right-hand side to allow for more specific information within the courses and to allow for better learning within the fitness element or the performance analysis element, that we can really hone in on the specific elements that we feel like we're going to create a more rounded coach, and we're giving them every opportunity to develop there.
Sounds exciting. Niall, one of the other additions is on the fourth column on the left-hand side, which is about the coach educators as well. So obviously you come on the courses expecting what they used to be called shooters, now called coach educators. You'd always be expecting them to be experts, but this actually will now make sure they are experts, like on by UEFA's highest standards now as well.
Yeah, and I think just on Craig's one of the key things with the introduction of the module CPD element is one of the key aspects under UEFA's reality-based learning will be actually seeing coaches in their own environment. So I think it's important to note as well that why we've taken the modules out of the courses in terms of the B licence, football fitness B, football fitness A, or the prerequisites to the A licence. So having a coach doing their CPD after they've done their B licence, they do the Elite Youth B, they go on and do their football fitness A, performance analysis A, and then get into the A licence. It means that we now can take those modules and that time out, and that time is actually going to be allocated to more specific how they coach, but also actually sending a coach educator to their own club. So you're going to now see at UEFA B licence, at UEFA A licence, and it already exists significantly at Pro licence, where coach educators will be going and evaluating coaches in terms of presenting to their players, delivering coaching practices with their own players. So it's as much reality based as it can possibly be, because you're evaluating a coach in their own environment. So one of the key things that UEFA have introduced in the 2020 convention is that each of the convention countries within the next 3 years have to have a formal coach educator qualification, and that's excellent for us because it allows people that may go through the grassroots educational pathway and into the professional pathway and decide to invest in themselves because they want to learn. And that's the key thing here. It is an investment in yourself. You're going to learn no matter what course you're going to do, even if you never want to work in that environment. You're going to take so much from it because it's a phenomenal environment, because the learning experience is not just coach educator led, it's peer led. You're talking with people in different environments. You're getting the opportunity to mix with people that you may have never got the opportunity to mix with. So really it's about giving them another opportunity to turn that into an investment in themselves in terms of becoming a coach educator. So the plan for us will be in 2021 to focus on ensuring that every current coach educator is qualified and developed at the respective level. And I mentioned this earlier, we've started that process where we've had 6 contacts over the past 18 months with our coach educators to get them ready for this. So in the next 12 months, we'll be able to ensure by the end of 2021, each of the respective coach educators working at every level will have that formal qualification. And that's great for them as well, because if they want to go and work internationally, they can be acknowledged as having that formal certificate at working as a coach educator. But equally for coaches from 2022 onwards, we will be giving the opportunity for coaches in general terms to be able to develop themselves as a coach educator, because playing, coaching, managing, coach education, it's all the same game but different strands of it, and there is an interconnection between each of them, but there are special skill sets that you need to have to be able to be each and every one of those things. And some people are built for that. Some people are built to just be a manager. Some people are built to just be a coach. Others are built to be a manager and a coach, and others may be built to be a coach educator and a coach. So it's about really figuring out what best suits. And for us, for any of the coaches that have formal coaching qualifications, the pro license, the A license, the B license, they will be minimum criteria. So to be a grassroots coach educator, you have to have a very competent knowledge of football action language and of the modern trends in the game. And we would see that having the UEFA B license as a minimum criteria is one of the requirements that you would have to have. And equally, as you work your way up in terms of being a national grassroots coach educator, having a UEFA A license, and once you go into the UEFA pathway, having the minimum criteria of being above the level that you're going to educate, but also having formal educational qualifications. So by the end of 2025, we will be saying anyone that's working at UEFA Pro license level would also have an academic educational qualification on the QQI framework at level 8, which is the equivalent to a degree. And a number of our educators are currently doing that. For example, Tom O'Connor is doing a master's in coaching in UCD. Craig himself is doing a master's at the moment in time in UL. So it's really important that if we talk about lifelong learning, we have to live it and we have to demonstrate it ourselves. And that's really, really important to us.
No, one of the other points I wanted to pick on, I should have mentioned earlier, you mentioned there, when people look at this, like there's a fantastic selection, so many different routes to follow as well, more variety, which really represents how football is and how it's taught and how it's consumed as well. You also mentioned that there's going to be courses sometimes that are not on the pathway, and one of the ones that kind of sprung to mind was, which has been a huge success, would be the female-only B license that's been done. I know they've been done co-funded with UEFA, but that's just an example of the type of thing that can be done that may not be prevalent on the pathway here.
Definitely, and the key thing here is that there is no perfect visual or a perfect pathway, and if we tried to put everything that we do onto one visual, we would end up losing out. For example, each of the coach educators that we currently have would all specifically deliver CPD events in relation to their own areas, and we're very lucky to have practitioners in terms of our international managers involved in the delivery of coach education. So Tom Moan at U19s, Jim Crawford at 21s, even Stephen Kenny in terms of the first team would be present where possible on all of the pro license contact blocks. So really it's about, we will have a substantial additional supplementary courses that will be available, and they will all be available on the website, which is easily accessible on www.fai.ie, and click on book a course and you'll immediately be brought to it. And there is a section specifically in terms of coach education on the website, which I know will come up now on the visual, so people will see the link to click, and all of the information in relation to the coaching courses, the prerequisites, the workshops. And really, once we have that e-learning platform, which we will have by the end of this year, it'll be even easier to promote these workshops, because even in terms of our connection with Jigsaw, we have the One Good Coach, which is a 3-hour workshop, which will be available free of charge to every grassroots coach, to every coach that wants to do it. But they're also working on a design for another level up coaching course. The referees have a second level up coaching course, and that'll be available as well. And really, there are other areas. For example, only this week alone, Paul O'Sam delivered a presentation to Craig and I in terms of the importance of diet and nutrition. As the U16 head coach, he felt that grassroots coaches need to have a better understanding of what role diet plays for a young player and what are the impacts in terms of what they actually put into their body. And even though they may not have an ambition to work at the professional game, he felt it was so important that young players became aware of what are good habits and what are bad habits. Another example would be one of the development officers, James Scott, recently presented on the importance of halftime team talks. And it was an excellent 3-hour workshop in terms of how important it is to manage that space and what your role is as the head coach. A development officer, Gerard Glynn, presented brilliantly to the staff this week on coach burnout. actually what it is and what it looks like, and how he experienced it after taking a team to the Special Olympics a number of years ago, and being prepared to deal with the fact that being away for 4 to 6 weeks will cause an effect of burnout when you return, and that grassroots coaches, when you're balancing work, family, club commitments, you could possibly experience burnout. So there will be a vast amount of other courses available, and as I say, when we have our e-learning platform, that will be the one-stop shop accessible for coaches to access those, and predominantly where possible we will be delivering those workshops free of charge.
Craig, we've seen in extensive detail there, and great insight from yourself and Niall on explaining it all there. From a coach's point of view, whether you're grassroots or you aspire to be hired and not at a professional level, the choice is just exciting, really. It's just, and like if you compare it to the 2014, it's just night and day, really.
Yeah, do you know what, Gareth? We've been really excited about it for the last kind of couple of months when it was starting to be formally pulled together. Certainly all the lads in the department, and Niall has put a hell of a lot of work into this. I think it needs to be acknowledged. But I think we've been extremely excited about it because we think that there's so many good avenues and so many good opportunities. And we're looking at the content and we're thinking it's such a great opportunity for coaches to come out and to be better and to have a really, really good impact on the players, because that's what we're ultimately here for. We're here to educate coaches, to educate players. At the end of the day, the player is critical in everything we do. So we're making sure that we give them a holistic experience, that they have so many avenues. So whether it's through the analysis, through the goalkeeping, the futsal, whatever it may be, the grassroots pathway, if they want to go professional, they can go professional, that we've ticked every box. And even afterwards now, so we're looking at the aftercare, so the educator license, for example. So we're engaging with people, the e-learning platform that will come into play, that we're re-engaging with people as much as we can, because the aftercare is so important that we engage with people more. We, as Niall said alluded to earlier, we need to do a better job of it, and we're going to do a better job of it. So we're putting things in place that allow that, but we're making sure it's accessible for everybody. We're extremely excited, and we have been for the last little while. So we're delighted to finally get it out there and to get coaches working within our system.
No, this ultimately, as Craig is going to suggest there, this strengthens the football industry as a whole, really, doesn't it? Because you have better coaches, you're going to have better players, as Craig has said, and it's going to be a better environment then for everybody.
100%. And look, I'll always revert back to Ruud's player development plan. It's all about creating better players for the future. And you said it there, Garrett. To have better players, we need better coaches, we need better coach education. And the reality for us is what we've done over the last number of years, implementing the player development plan, implementing the alignment, ensuring we have a universal football language that coaches all over the country and all over the world that engage with us have a universal reference that they can discuss and compare and identify their own situation within that reference. And that's what Craig talked about earlier. We provide that reference point, and then coaches have their own personality within that reference. We're not saying you have to coach in a certain way. We're not saying this is the only way that you do it. We're saying this is what is best practice in the modern game, and you need to tailor yourself and develop your methods and your approach within that. And it's really important for coaches when they see the visual and they see that we're constantly increasing the amount of coaching courses we're delivering. The most important message is we're delivering it for coaches to develop themselves, and we're reducing the cost. Like you take, for example, just even on the basic courses, the grassroots courses, the PDP1, the PDP2, to do the two of those in the past, it used to cost €120. That's now down to €90. So we're reducing the cost in terms of making it more accessible, because we're increasing one or two other things in terms of specialist workshops, mandatory workshops, and all of those have been taken, not decisions by ourselves, but from feedback from all of the coaching courses. And one of the key things that we're layering in with the e-learning platform is whenever we deliver a coaching course, and on average we would deliver around 600 different courses a year and up to 14,000 people within that, you would turn around and ask every one of the coaches now to complete a formal feedback. So coaches will still be able to give us more feedback. This is not the pathway set in stone for the next 4 years. This is what we're going to be entering 2021 with, and we're going to build on that, and we're going to take on the feedback. And sometimes we get feedback and we're able to go, no, we don't agree with that, but we appreciate your feedback, and we explain to them why we go in a different direction. It's not a thing that we're just led by the ground. We're very much certain of what we want to achieve and how we want to achieve it. And that's led from the dynamic international high performance department that we have, from Stephen Kenny all the way down to Niall Harrison in the National Academy, and from Vera all the way down across the board in the girls' side into Ruth Doctor. And it's really about, we have a very clear strategy in place. We know where we want to go, and that's whether it be player development, whether it be the League of Ireland, whether it be the national leagues underage, whether it be international football coach education. It's all now joined up, and that's probably what's the most exciting thing, because I believe 2021 is going to be a great year for Irish football. I believe in terms of coach education, we're implementing what UEFA's 2020 coaching convention is saying as best practice and more. And we've got a lot of exciting things in the player development front, in the League of Ireland structures, in the structure of the organisation itself. So it's an exciting time for us in Irish football, and it's great to be part of it.
I definitely agree with you, Niall, and I suppose this pathway perfectly aligns to that as well. And I just want to say, like, great work, guys. Like, you know, it looks fantastic. You know, a lot of, I said, a lot of options there, and I think coaches all around the country, all around the world, are going to be interested in getting involved in this, as we seen before. We'll obviously release information on the e-learning platform once that's ready to roll out as well, and another exciting part of this coaching journey for people. And I suppose, just as Niall said, you know, we were always looking for feedback. So if you have any questions or any comments, leave them on social media, on the Coach Ed page on Twitter and on Facebook as well. We really encourage interaction. Make sure you sign up to the Coach Education newsletter as well, so you get all the latest features, videos, free session plans, and obviously we'll have the latest news there and courses as well. Thanks very much, Niall. Thanks very much, Craig. And thank you for watching. Great webinar, and I hope you take a lot from it. Thanks.